Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're so excited today to team up with Stratus Wealth Advisors and Project Equity for a conversation this afternoon about demystifying the succession planning process. And we're thrilled that you've chosen to join us, so welcome. My name is Liz, and I am here to run through a few housekeeping items before we get started. So first things first, today's webinar is going to run for about 60 minutes, and your audio will be muted for the duration of that time. However, we do want to hear from you, so we encourage you to ask questions by typing them into the chat box, and we'll be monitoring that box throughout this conversation, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible during the Q&A portion at the end of today's presentation. So as you can see on the screen, we are thrilled to have Sam Brownell, founder of Stratus Wealth Advisors, and Miyaka Cochrane, Business Engagement and Partnership Manager with Project Equity, here with us today. They're going to start things off for us with a quick presentation, and then we're going to move into a panel discussion. And for that, we'll be joined by Hilary Abell. She's co-founder of Project Equity, Martin Stavas, principal at Martin Stavas Consulting, and Doug O'Brien, president and CEO of NCBA Clusa. Now, all of our presenters and panelists today are experts in the area of transition to employee ownership, and they're excited to support you in your own succession planning journey. So let's get started. And with that, I am going to hand things over to Sam Brownell. Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Excited to be here. And thank you again to the folks at Project Equity for being a co-expert here, and of course thanks to NCBA for hosting us today, and to those of you who have joined us, again, we appreciate you being here. Our discussion today is going to start with two short presentations, as Liz said, and then get into a roundtable. What we really want to talk about is proactive succession planning, and whether you're an independent business owner who is getting closer to thinking about an ownership transition, or you're a purchasing cooperative who's sitting there and has a lot of members who are asking questions about ownership transition, or should be asking questions about ownership transition, this is going to be really useful for you, because we find that if you do this right, there are three stakeholders that can be benefits, or beneficiaries, I should say, of a good succession plan. That's the current owner, the incoming owner or owners, and those loyal employees and customers. So let's hop in. Just a short introduction on myself. My name is Sam Brownell. I founded Stratus Wealth Advisors about 8 years ago. Before that, I actually was out in the Bay Area. I lived in San Francisco, worked in investment banking. Now I'm on the East Coast. I live in Kensington, just north of DC. But what we do at Stratus is we provide full life cycle succession planning, starting with a business valuation, getting into that retirement cash flow analysis, how that business valuation fits into your retirement planning, and then putting together a succession plan where we coordinate with all your other top experts and advisors and make sure that your succession plan works for you personally and professionally. And we're really excited because we are also an associate member of NCBA, and we are big fans and very much support the worker ownership movement and what it can do for our economy. So to get things kicked off, I thought we would look at a short cartoon here about the importance of planning ahead. And many business owners don't think about the fact that they may not be around forever until something comes up and slaps them in the face. And whether it's a disability, a health issue, could be a divorce, a bankruptcy, something will force them to all of a sudden think, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be here forever. What am I going to do? And that, in our minds, can be a little bit too late in the process. We want to start planning for that transition 3 to 5 years before you think you might get out of the business. Because your business is very much, it's like a barge. It takes a long time to move, and we want to make sure we get on top of the important issues early before it becomes a crisis or a scramble. So we'll start you out with a number, 27%. 27%, this is the average value that is not realized in an ownership transfer or a sale. And the reason that this is important is, think about it in numerical terms. If your business is potentially worth $1 million, you could be giving up $270,000. $10 million, you could be giving up $2.7 million. Starting early will allow us to think about how we maximize the value of that business. How do we get it running more turnkey so we can close this value gap? And one of the things that we're going to talk about today, and especially get into when Miaka comes on and later in our roundtable, is how is that ownership from the workers going to help create a market for the owner's shares so that they're not sitting there just taking whatever comes down the pike because they couldn't really find anybody to take over their company. So really important to start these conversations early, even though it may be a little uncomfortable or you may not really know what to say. Coming to the right folks, this is what can help close this gap so that you are more comfortable when you do get to your retirement. So let's go through some steps. When we work with business owners, the first thing we do is we sit down and we do evaluation. What does an objective third party think that your business is worth? And let me give you a short story here. About 4 years ago, we worked with a company, sat down with a business owner. He goes, Sam, the guy across town, he just sold his business for $5 million. I'm at least as good a business owner as he is, so my business should be worth at least that much. Maybe, maybe not. And that's the reason to have somebody come in and take an objective look at your business. Because what we're going to want to do is make sure that your business is in fact worth somewhere close to 5 million. And if it's not, what are we going to do to help maximize the value of that business? And that gets down to these 3 P's: predictable profits, predictable growth, leading to that third P, which is predictable value. Right? And we've got to start at the beginning with those predictable profits before we get to that predictable value. Again, this is where planning becomes really, really important. Another piece of succession planning is to diversify where your net worth is. A lot of business owners say, it's all right, I'm just going to sell my business to fund my retirement. Okay, well, if you don't know what your business is worth and you don't know who's going to buy it, and you don't have anything outside of the business, what happens if you were in the restaurant or hospitality industry last year and that's when you wanted to retire?
Hey, Sam, sorry to interrupt, but it looks like we have some technical difficulties. We're not seeing the slides advancing.
Oh, we're not seeing the slides advancing. Uh-oh. Are we good now?
We're still on the introducing our speakers slide, unfortunately.
Oh, look at that. Let me restart here and see if we can get a better take here.
Thanks everyone for your patience. This is Miaka here, Sam's partner in crime, as it were.
Yes, thank you, Miaka. Now, are we any better?
Still just seeing the introducing our speakers. Maybe we need some technical support here for a moment.
Yeah, let's see here, guys.
So sorry, this is popping back on again.
No, we're good. I think we're good now.
Are we good?
How about now, guys?
Yes, that's perfect.
Good,
sorry
good.
about that.
Yes. No, that's all right. Good. Somehow the share button got paused here. So good call, Miaka. Thank you. So we'll go over this real quick. Here's the 27% that we were talking about earlier. Really important. Keep that in mind. All right. We'll go through these real quick. Business valuation. Know where you stand. Come up with a plan to maximize that value. That's why starting early is important. Right? Build up that wealth inside and outside of your business. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as the old saying goes. Make sure you're spreading this out. Right? One of the things that folks don't think about either are the tax and estate issues that go along with a succession plan. What are you doing before the sale to help mitigate taxes? How are you structuring the sale, which is something that Miaka will get into later. And what do you do post-sale? What does that payout, what does that earnout look like? All with the mind of how do you get the most net in your pocket? And it's not the gross price, it's the net that's coming to you that matters to you and your family from a retirement and intergenerational wealth transfer standpoint. And then, of course, estate planning documents. Let's make sure that if something were to happen, if the partner dies, how does their family get paid back? Do you have life insurance on each other? What about your own personal estate planning documents? All of these things need to be coordinated. And finally, assemble a good team of experts. It's really, really important from our perspective to get the right team together. Accountants, consultants, lawyers, bankers. Folks at Project Equity, they are excellent. You're going to need somebody like that on your team. Bring together the right people. Yes, you will have to spend money, but it will be money that you will get a return on your investment. And that becomes really important when you go through this process. You're not just throwing away money, you're putting it into planning so that you can grow the value of your business. Question we get often, where do I begin? Get that business valuation done. It's really, really important. It's like going on a hike. If you don't know where that trailhead is, it's really hard to figure out where you're going to go. You've got to get that baseline of what your business is worth by an objective observer, not by internally. We all think our businesses are worth a lot, and that's great, but what is the outside? What does an outsider think? And then we can start looking at those other questions, like how does it support your retirement? What red flags are coming out of that valuation? Do we have issues with HR? Is our sales team dysfunctional, or do we just not have processes memorialized so that if somebody were taking over our job, they'd have no idea what they were doing? That way we can work on increasing the value of the business. Remember, if I'm a buyer, I am not going to be looking at what you ideally want to do in your business. So show me. It's like a real estate listing, right? Have that listing presentation. How am I going to make money with the tools that you have developed? Just a really good thing to keep in mind to get that succession planning process started. So options. And there are more than you think. And these top options, I'm calling them traditional, primarily because this is what people think about. I run a family business. My son and daughter are going to take over. I've had a key employee for 20 or 25 years. They feel like family to me. I want them to run the business. There's a competitor across town. They're younger than me. They don't service quite the niche we do. Maybe they want to buy us from a strategic acquisition point. Those are all fine, but we found that the percentage of people who are transitioning like this has been going down, and therefore we have to look at other options. Now, there has been some work in the private equity space to roll up independent businesses in certain sectors. That's not really what we're going to look at and what we want to look at, because from a purchasing cooperative standpoint, that's not really what you're going for. And that's where the second and third bullets there under these options that are gaining popularity that Miyaka will speak more directly to become really important, because there are lots of benefits here. They create a market for the owner's shares where one may not have existed, and they give the employees lots of times a really good buy-in. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Miyaka. He's going to get much more in depth into what's going on in the employee ownership exit planning world.
Thank you very much, Sam. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's hope it works. We seeing that all right?
Looks good, Miyaka.
All right, thank you, Sam. All right, so first of all, let me give a quick little intro about myself. My name is Miyaka Cochran. I'm a business engagement manager here at Project Equity. We are a national nonprofit that helps businesses and business owners explore employee ownership as a strategy in succession planning, or to unlock the unique benefits for a business, even if they want to stick around. Employee ownership models, including most commonly co-ops and ESOPs that Sam mentioned, are often underutilized in industries across the nation. And so we're here to help raise awareness and help people explore them and either check them off the list to see if they're not a good fit, or help people realize the power of them to make a strong succession plan for their company and the future of their business and their own retirement or exit. Myself, I got interested in employee ownership because I grew up around it. My uncle was one of the founding owners of the first cooperative grocery store in California, way back in the early 70s. And then as I grew up and went on through life, I discovered and saw examples of ESOPs, both here in my home state of California, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and also nationwide, as well as in Europe. So I'm very excited to share with you about how these business models work and maybe some of the tools and ways that you can utilize them in the companies. So first of all, as you know, Sam has highlighted very well, selling a business just isn't easy. You know, with leading brokers reporting that only 20% of businesses that they have listed for sale ever find a buyer. And traditionally, one of the steadfast ways to pass along a business is within families. But currently now only about 15% transfer intergenerationally or to other family members. All of these factors combined, it really puts in about 1 in 5 businesses are at risk at closing, and these numbers are all pre-COVID as well. And so that's really put a strain on a lot of businesses and a lot of industries. And we see employee ownership as ways to not only help these businesses that maybe don't have a clear path to succession, but also can help bolster them in difficult times as well. So a lot of people understand the power of employee ownership in terms of the impact in employees' lives, the benefits of profit sharing, the ways that it can really unlock an ownership mentality and have workers you know, develop and grow more passion and dedication to the business because they are literally invested in the success of that business. But the other parts that are not quite as known is these business models are just highly strategic as well. And so if we're looking at some of the data here from Democracy at Work Institute, for example, profit margins in employee-owned companies on average are 8.5% higher than peers. Some of this has to do with the tax advantages and benefits that they can take advantage with these models. And in addition to that, sales and employment grows as well. So more profit equals more growth, and that helps grow jobs as well. So it's good for the community. In addition to that, we also see fewer layoffs with employee ownership. This is a really key statistic, and in my opinion, also, you know, one of the reasons that to being able to take advantage of tax benefits, because when you look at models and the impact they have on communities and employees' lives, things like retirement plans with an ESOP, that really translates into ways that tax benefits can be provided to those companies because they really show powerful impact on the employees, on employment, and as a tool to help fight off unemployment, as well as to the business as well. Now, if we look specifically at ESOPs, one of the, again, the 2 major forms of employee ownership that we look at, when you're looking at comparisons during crisis times, they really actually produce greater stability than even government spending, according to data that we're looking at here. So, you know, if you're looking at an ESOP firm that would be the majority would be owned by an ESOP, they outperform other jobs at other firms at job retention by a 4-to-1 rate. In addition to this, majority ESOP firms generally maintain standard hours and salaries at significantly higher rates during times of emergency. So all of these go to show that, you know, there's great strengths in these models, and the benefits to the employees are very strong, the benefits to the company are strong, and that all combined really impacts local economies. I'd like to give you a little bit of a local example here. As I said, I'm a Northern California neighborhood, and I grew up more out in the country. And you know, small businesses and even engineering firms out in these communities, such as Nevada County, you know, really are disconnected from the economies of the big cities like San Francisco. And so that's both a challenge and an opportunity. For California Solar Electric Company was a company that was founded with a deep commitment to that community. They wanted to grow their business, but they wanted to double down on serving locals and businesses within Nevada County. And they made a conscious choice to really focus on that instead of continuing their growth sort of outward to service, larger and larger areas. And in shifting to employee ownership, one of the amazing things that happened is when the pandemic hit and revenue really took a big downturn during that, the employees who are now employee owners met and came up with a plan to offer a new product. They actually came up with the idea to create power generators, emergency power generators to sell, which was a huge need amidst the California fires as well. So they created something that both was a strategic business value, helped serve community, and in the end, turned around that year for them. So they really came close to what they were on target for financially before the pandemic. An amazing example of what happens with that culture when you see employee ownership unlocked, and what that ownership mentality can really do to an employee base who themselves are out of work, but they're owners as well as the employee. So they got to figure it out. Now I'd like to cover the different forms of employee ownership. So I've touched a little bit on ESOPs. I'd like to take a step back and really focus here on worker-owned cooperatives. Worker-owned cooperatives are democratically governed by nature. They're popular because they are less expensive to set up than an ESOP. They still have some tax benefits available for them. They're 100% employee owned, and the employee owners each get a vote to elect a board members. A board of directors is established, and then that board of directors works with management. And so one of the most commonly held disbeliefs about worker-owned cooperatives is you shift to a worker-owned cooperative and everyone's voting on everything. Well, that's usually, I will say, not the case. We really see most companies that shift to worker-owned cooperatives keep the same structure in place, management structure, etc., that made them successful. But what they're adding in is ways for employees to participate in governance through their vote and through the board, and have open up more discussions and possibilities there that really create a wonderful, healthy culture and support the business, as well as provide benefits for the employees. Now, the other form is an employee-owned trust. This is actually a less known form in the United States. It has a little bit more traction in history in Europe, having been founded in the United Kingdom specifically. And an employee-owned trust, the difference between a trust and a co-op is that the business is actually owned by a trust. Similar to a co-op, we see, we recommend generally having about 10 plus employees as a good starting point to consider trust ownership of this nature. And the employees are the beneficiaries. So profit sharing is built in so that the employees are going to be able to participate in profits of the companies. It's free to employees, and it's highly customizable. So employee ownership trusts are often utilized because of their customization and really can be designed bespoke to fit that company. Another thing that's generally built in, although there is some flexibility there, is that an employee-owned trust generally cannot be sold in the future. So it's a perpetual trust, as we say. And so this is also a way for owners who are exiting, who really want to make sure that their business continues to serve that community and be rooted in that community and not sell to a future buyer or competitor. It's a way to also help that. On the other side, what you trade for flexibility and customization is that there are few, if any, tax advantages currently to employee ownership trusts. There are some initiatives to help try to develop that and replicate some of the tax benefits that have been developed over in Europe for these models, but currently there's not much out there. Now, ESOPs. So ESOPs, or employee stock ownership plans, similar to an employee-owned trust, is a form of trust ownership. It's free to the employees, and it's structured as a qualified retirement plan, similar to a 401k, and actually governed by the same body federally as well. ESOPs are very powerful models. They come with extremely positive tax relief for the company, for the selling owner, and again, it's free to the employee. So there's a lot to like here. But it's a little bit of a high cost, high reward situation because they're more complex and a higher setup cost. And there's also some ongoing administration fees for the ESOPs. And, but for larger firms and larger businesses, this can be really powerful because you once you factor in all of the tax benefits you're getting, that setup and ongoing cost in many cases ends up becoming neutral. And then eventually you just earn it back, and they're more profitable than even a cooperative can be because of the tax nature of that. So there are ways that you can utilize a lot of financial strategies for ESOPs. And another benefit for ESOPs is that you don't have to transition the entire company. So some owners will use an ESOP strategy to sell 30% or 40%, and then retain 60% ownership with a plan to eventually phase out ownership over time. So really an amazing form, and also, even though it does not come with built-in governance roles that employees can participate in, you can develop that. There's ways that you can make a cooperative an ESOP, act a little bit more like a cooperative as well and get the best of both worlds. So one more example I'd love to give before we get a little bit back into the nitty-gritty of how financing works is Delta Pipeline. So Delta Pipeline, the owner, and now former owner, Craig Danley, he himself worked in a similar engineering and construction firm that closed its doors in 1989. And so he firsthand really had the experience of being a worker, that he was dedicating his life to this business and had it shut down. And so when he built this from the ground up, Delta Pipeline, down in Southern California, Long Beach area, he really built it with a focus of being employee oriented. He really saw the value of building a wonderful culture around employees. He took employees who were entry level and really, pipe layer helpers that as their time with the company went on, they got an additional training and certification and then stuck with the company instead of moving on. And so there's a really amazing story here of how the culture that he's built really rewarded employees for their long-term dedication to the business. And so an employee ownership transition was really a natural, a natural step as he was looking at his way to exit the business, because he really felt that that culture could be maintained and continued, and adding the benefits of an ESOP. On top of that, it also gives these employees a robust retirement plan as well. So really great story there. And now, after we've covered the models and a couple stories of business examples, I want to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how an employee ownership transition works. Widely, a lot of people see employee ownership as something that can be very, cost heavy, particularly for the employees, for an employee buyout. But really, largely, most employee ownership transitions are done through a leveraged buyout. And so what we do here is that a sale price and deal terms are finalized, and then we actually develop the financing in collaboration with the owner so that the newly transitioned employee-owned business obtains a loan that it pays back to buy out the old business over future revenue. So the loan is paid off over time. The employees, if it's a co-op, they have a small contribution, but other than that, really it's this loan that the business is, in a sense, paying for itself over time. So it allows employees to immediately start to get some profit sharing, but also for the owner to get paid and exit financially as well. And so when we look at sort of how the financing is actually structured, kind of pull open the hood here, we see business owners often like to take between an average of 30 to 50% owner financed. And what that means is generally they'll take what's called a seller's note. So they're saying, hey, I don't need 40% of the sales price today. I'll take that plus interest over the next 5 to 8 years. And then a bank or community development fund, Project Equity also has our own fund, which we've developed that we can tap into for some businesses, will cover the other 50 to 70%. So that way the owner, gets their payment of that 50 to 70% at the time of sale, and then is able to get some over time, with some owners choosing for strategic reasons to really actually take a full seller's note if they don't need the whole amount or even a majority today, and then that opens up additional options for them as well. So a lot of different financial strategies that we can structure with, and this is all really great to work with someone like Sam and Stratus Wealth Advisors, because as an owner, you really kind of want to look at your goals and what you want your life to be like post-retirement and post-exit, and kind of work back from there and be like, okay, how can I maximize this for myself in the way that's going to be most important to me? And then lastly, in a co-op model, employees do have a buy-in amount. It's a nominal part of the sales price, you know, on average about 5% of the sales price, but what that translates into, it could be $25, it could be $250, it could be $1,000, could be $5,000. But the employees are also not obligated to pay that out of pocket either. It can be structured as a paycheck withdrawal over time, over the course of even a couple years. So they're not having to dip into their bank account or savings for that as well. Now, project equity and how we work transition-wise is we have first our exploration process, and we want to explore the fit. And so we do free business advisory calls and consultations with owners and businesses, whether people are just curious and want to learn more about how these work, or businesses and owners who are serious and really want to consider this as an option. So we can really service both and help owners understand how these may or may not fit their goals. And then owners who seriously want to go to the next level and explore this further, we do have a feasibility program. So in the feasibility program, we do a deep dive on 3 pillars: finances, where we do financial projections, debt capacity analysis to produce a range of sales prices depending on different financing scenarios, as well as some initial employee engagement. Who's kind of that core starting team that you see would be beneficial to bring into the conversation at some point to really help be drivers in this process if you're going to go down the route of transition. And also management transition. So if an owner is deeply involved operationally and is looking to either exit or make a change, what's needed there? And that all culminates in a straw model or like a blueprint for the owner and that his or her chosen employees to really understand what this would take and what it's going to look like for all involved. And at that point, owners can choose to transition and pull the trigger and let's go. Or often owners will take a step back and are like, okay, I have all this knowledge. I'm going to take a year or two and really kind of build some more value and put some building blocks in place because I like this option. I just want to prepare for it. But the owners who are ready will transition with us, and we, go into the business structure, the development of it, the financing, the training and development engagement with employees. We close the sale, make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And then one unique thing about project equity, because there's a lot of really amazing firms and nonprofits that do transition work out in the United States. One of the things that we uniquely offer is our Thrive program. So in addition to helping explore the fit, go through the feasibility and transition, we'll actually stick around with that business for up to an additional 2 years to provide additional support, guidance, and make sure that the business is continuing to grow healthy and strong. So I'm going to zip through these because I'm excited to get to our wonderful discussion panel here, but some quick readiness factors if you want to look at this, or an owner who's considering this, is you want to look for profitability in the company. Is it in good financial health for about the past 5 years specifically? What's the employee count, and are there experienced workers? Is there high turnover? Is everyone there? Is no one there for over a year? Or do you have people who've been around for a while? That can be really good. Co-ops, we see as a good minimum is 10 employees. ESOPs, 30 employees is usually a good minimum. And then a proven track record. Has the business around? Is it established in the community? Does it have a customer base or client base? These are all good factors to look for. And in terms of what you can do to prepare, similar to what Sam said, seek consultation. Find who are your trusted advisors that you speak to today, accountant, tax professional, and engage with succession planning. So whether it's through Stratus, project equity, or both, find those people who are going to help guide you in this process and help give you the information to make an informed decision. Review the profitability, identify key employees, and then outline your transition management needs if you're exiting. In addition to that, we do have some awesome resources, both Stratus and Project Equity, on our website. So please go ahead and check that out. I will say personally, I love Stratus's succession planning kit. I've actually poked around that myself because I have some family members and friends who are considering these things. So some really great resources there, as well as Project Equity. We have some wonderful case studies, white papers, and a whole slew of information to help you on your journey of exploring employee ownership. In terms of guidance, this is what we want you to step away from this for, whether you are an owner yourself of a business or you work with business owners and want to give them recommendations. The first and foremost is get the books in order. We love to see 5 years of P&Ls, tax returns are good, and then a record of the owner compensation for those 5 years as well. And the next is going to be cash flow hit, stable or growing profitability is look is on the upturn, is on the downturn, etc. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Sam as well. So Sam, you can speak to a couple of these.
Sure. Thanks, Miyaka. So yeah, like Miyaka said, just giving you an overview of what's good to know. Red flags, we talked about it earlier in terms of valuation. Just really good to know if there's anything that is going to be pointed out, right? Oh my goodness, there's a big loan from an owner to the business. Is this really sustainable? Those are things that we want to look at. Know who your buyer is, right? Is it internal? Is it external? And what type, if it's internal or external, how does that factor into the taxes? How does that factor into the estate planning? And then as Miyaka mentioned a couple slides ago, key employees. Make sure you know who those key employees are, and so you can include them and be transparent about this process. It's very, very important that you don't just drop it on these folks the day before the transition is going to happen, that, oh, well, I'm leaving. So with that, we're going to jump to a couple exclusive consultation notes. So for those of you who are interested, feel free. Our numbers, our emails are below, Miyaka and mine. Please reach out to us. We'd love to get on with you. The two of us would be happy to get on there, be able to answer some questions, see what your goals are, and really talk about how to begin this process, because it can be overwhelming. So I'm going to hand it back to Miyaka here to take us to the conclusion, and then we'll get to the roundtable.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, and so the other thing that we want to cover, as Sam and I can do a call in collaboration with you, is why is a business evaluation important? How does it fit into your retirement plan? And if you're not planning on retiring, how do you start to put in the building blocks for that now, even if you're looking to phase out over the next 10 years or longer? And then we can also, if you're interested in employee ownership, answer some simple questions to find out if any of these models would actually fit your needs, and if an employee ownership transition is something that you should look at more in depth. And then last but certainly not least, we can help discuss about industry-specific opportunities or challenges that relate to you and your business, and how that may affect succession planning and employee ownership options. So as Sam said, feel free to contact us. If you're looking for Stratus and their wonderful succession planning and valuation services, Sam is a great contact. We offer free consultations as well here for employee ownership. And if you want to take advantage of our exclusive co-consultation for the NCBA Clusa webinar, we'd love to speak with you at the same time and give you both perspectives at once. So please go ahead and take advantage of that. We look forward to speaking with you. So now, without further ado, I'd love to invite our panelists, Hillary, Doug, and Martin. We can go ahead and all share screens now, and I will stop presenting. All right, there we go. Hi, Hillary. Hi, Doug. How are you?
Hey.
Doing well.
Great.
We'll have Good. Wonderful. Hillary's got some wonderful redwood trees in the background. So
we love them out here.
Yeah, fun little side note, where Hillary's living now is actually where I grew up, out in Sonoma County, California. Hi, Martin. How are you today? We can't hear you.
I think we're okay now. I was
All
telling
right.
you, I'm doing great other than being muted.
There you go. Well, we're not muted now. So thank you all for your time and joining us in the discussion. I'm really excited. I have some great questions lined up to spark some discussion among the group, and we'd love to invite questions from the audience today. So for attendees, if you have any burning questions that you would like for this panel of amazing industry experts to answer and discuss, please go ahead and submit it through the questions function, and I'll get to those questions in just a moment. So how we'll do this today is I'll ask a few questions, and if somebody really feels called to kind of kick off the discussion for the question, go ahead and jump right in, and we can have a few minutes to discuss and get different perspectives, and then we'll move on to the next. Sound good? So first, let's start with some positives. You know, what I'd love to hear is just some success stories. Anything inspiring. We're here today, hosted by NCBA Clusa. So, you know, are there specific inspiring examples of how business succession through employee ownership has really been powerful?
Well, I've worked with quite a good number of business owners who, you know, looked at this path and took the ESOP path in particular, and I've seen so many success stories. It's hard to pick. It's such an effective route. But I guess a very sort of a typical example, and I've seen quite a lot, is the owner who wants to kind of phase out or ramp down. And these days, you know, for professional people, if you're you know, CPAs, lawyers, advisors, consultants, all these people, just about nobody, you know, works sort of a standard full-time thing and then bang, one day off a cliff, they stop. Instead, they start to transition to winding down, and the lawyers will be of counsel or part-time, or they're going to consulting. And so they stay involved, but not as intensively. And a lot of business owners I've talked to wish they had the same option. They don't really figure out quite how to do that. You know, if I'm running the business or I'm not. But they discovered that with you know, the ESOP employee ownership idea, that there's so much flexibility there, and the common path is to have an owner decide, well, I'll sell half the company this year, and then over the next few years, I'm going to continue to sort of coach and develop my people, be training some successors, and year by year, I'll sort of do less and less. You know, the employees now own half the company. They're going to step up and take up more responsibility, take things more seriously. As I say, continue to coach and mentor them. And, you know, after we get things sort of set up, maybe I'll play golf on Wednesdays. And a year into it, people are doing more of them, play golf on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And this ability to sort of ramp down that way at your own schedule. And if by year 4, I'm stopping in once a week to see how things are going and make sure it's okay. Maybe I'll become chairman of the board, and finally my you know, person I have in mind to take over for me as president will do that. And maybe after about 5 years, it sounds like about the right time, you know, I'll sell the other half at that point, and who knows what else I might do.
Yeah, and it's a great pathway to do that, and, you know, make sure you get your tea time goals in your succession plan, right? Or whatever your thing is, time on the beach, time with the grandchildren, whatever you like.
So that flexibility to fashion a, you know, sort of a tailored phase out. Because it's emotionally, it's tough for a lot of owners to say, you know, this is who I am, this is who I've been for so long. You know, right now I go to the country club and introduce myself. I'm the president of Acme Widget Company. You know, once I sell it, will I be a nobody or whatever? So there's an emotional challenge there, and the idea of saying, well, I'll take half the value off the table, because meanwhile they have their investment manager beating them over the head and shoulders, saying, look, you know, the good news is you've got $20 million in personal net worth. You're really wealthy. The bad news is at least 18 million of that is this single asset, this business you own that's illiquid. And the next recession could be one that hits your industry and wipes you out. Your age, you know, you're really dangerously undiversified. And the person says, yeah, you know, the left side of my brain, the rational side says, yeah, absolutely, I hear you. That makes a lot of sense. The right side, the emotional side says, yeah, I intended to do that, but, you know, they just keep dragging their feet because of that, you know, personal involvement. So this is sort of a solution to say, I'm still retaining the title, but I'm taking half that value off the table, turn it over to the wealth manager who can now diversify me. And if something hits, my family's still in great shape. I can breathe easier. So there's so much appeal to that. So that's one of the success routes for people who have found happiness in that path.
Yeah, and that's absolutely, that's super great. It's a really good example for some success stories here. You know, and one thing I'd like to mention too is that there's some possibilities to do that within cooperative structures as well. So, you know, even if you're switching to 100% of a cooperative, you know, I'd love to hear, I know Hillary, you have a great experience with this. Doug, if you want to pipe in terms of how cooperative businesses really can meet the needs of business owners as well.
Sure. I'll just piggyback on Martin's reference to the emotional journey to share one cooperative story. We have just finished the transition of a company in Oakland, a warehousing and distribution company that is a third generation family business. And the last generation of the family owner was so emotional that the first time we met him, and he was with his wife and talking about the idea that he wanted actually to transition the company to his employees, he teared up the very first time. The first time he announced that plan to his employees, he teared up in front of all 40 of them. And it's taken them about 2 years to get through the journey. And the love that this man has for his company has also come along with having a bit of a hard time letting go. And so the work of our client services team, helping them through the design of the cooperative, figuring out the design that's right for them, for their business, was also accompanied by, we were able to connect them with another management consultant who helped them do management team structuring, and really got the senior leaders who the original owner had relied on, his right-hand people, but got them into a more formal management team, got them all job descriptions, helped them all understand how they would be able to lead the company forward, and how that would get combined with having democratic governance through a board of directors, but that board was going to stay out of the day-to-day operations. So they really came to understand that, and they've just now celebrated, just last week, I think it was, they've completed their hard-won transition and are, really looking forward to the future of the company. And some new ideas are already bubbling up, even as the original owner is going to take about a year to transition out. So that's a story I'm really happy about right now. And we'll just add, Miyaka, I think, made reference to the fact that it is also possible for cooperative transitions to happen in phases. And that's not very common, but it's very doable. So we're finding that in some cases right now, especially with the COVID recession, that some owners really want to move down that path, but they're not ready to do it fully. Or maybe it's not the right time financially for the company or for the employees to take full ownership of a company that's dealing with a global pandemic. So, so cooperatives are more flexible, or can be more flexible than many people assume, both in terms of how they approach management. Oftentimes it stays very much the same. If management is working well, there's no need for it to change when a business becomes a worker cooperative. And there's a number of other variables that organizations like ours can help you think through.
And I'll just mention something very, very quickly and pick up on a number of comments. And I really appreciate Stratus and Project Equity bringing this, and I'm really happy that NCBA Clusa can host this, because it's a really practical thing for members of cooperatives, many of them who are members of NCBA Clusa. But it's also, Miyake, you talked about, you're sort of, the way that I heard it is you kind of reverse engineer. The owner of that small business needs to think about, what does their final or the next chapter look like? Financial is a big piece of it, obviously, a big piece of it. But these small business owners, as Hillary just talked about, they've likely poured their life into the business. They're very invested in ways that go way beyond financial. And part of that investment is the people who work there, the people who've also spent 5, 10, maybe 20 years of their lives. And that small business owner knows that, and they value it in such a big way. So as they're thinking about what's the legacy, not only for their individual family, but what's the legacy for that work family? The tools that you're presenting today is huge for those workers that have put those years in, because they can start to grow their own entrepreneurial life. And it has to be done very strategically. We know that, you alluded to it a number of times, that many times the small business owners, because they didn't need to, it wasn't sort of in the moment and in the nature, they hadn't handed off some of those managerial or some of those executive functions. So doing it in a really strategic and deliberate way can bring real success, whether it's a cooperative or ESOP. So it's really about that legacy for those workers and the community too. So
fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I'll just jump in with one final thought here, Miyaka, about, we talked a lot, and it may seem like it's only the numbers, and that's kind of the headline, but what we're talking about here is the qualitative. And that's really what's more important. And as these three have alluded to, in Stratus, we do a lot of work in specific industries, and one of them is the lumber and building materials. And lots of these folks, they may be one of the biggest employers in town. And so if they don't have an exit plan, you're talking 100, 150, 200 people in a small town. They don't have anywhere to go, right? They just lost their job. The community suffers because the standard of living goes down. And so all of this becomes really, really important. So I think everybody's speaking to the right things here.
Absolutely, that's great.
To give people just a real big picture sort of overview, that the tax benefits that an ESOP offers are so staggering that, you know, people, when they first see it, they think there must be some mistake. This can't be legal. This must be one of those scams that the big accounting firms used to come up with as some kind of tax shelter, and then the IRS would unwind them. It's so phenomenal. But the beauty of those advantages, there are sort of two things. It's what makes it possible to pull this off. The finance benefits essentially pay for the benefit of it. But it also makes it possible, as Sam and others have touched on, that an owner can, as they say, do well while doing good. And that's the thing that really draws owners, is that you can leave this legacy, this business that you've built. You know, all the customers that depend on it, all the employees that work there, it's their lives and their livelihood. In the whole community, the town you're in, you know, you've got all these, you know, vendors that sell to you. You know, you're probably your insurance, you know, agent's biggest customer, and they depend on you, and your CPA depends on you. Mm-hmm. Anybody else buys your firm, and the company's probably going to get moved or stripped down. A lot of people are going to lose their job. You know, your CPA is going to lose a client. Your insurance broker is going to lose a client. The bank's going to lose a client. The Little League sponsorship's going to disappear that you used to do for the Little League team. The whole community takes this hit. And the great thing about this employee ownership route is that you can, avoid all those negatives. You can keep the whole thing going, the whole legacy that you've left. You know, the name of your business stays on the wall when you're retired. You drive by it, it still says, Alice Jones, retailer, whatever. It's this name is still there. All that's remaining intact as you phase out. Without really, it's not like a big giveaway. The tax benefit is so phenomenal that you will typically do as well, if not better, sort of price-wise, than selling to anybody else the great majority of the time.
Exactly, and that's a really good point, and also highlights the fact that many owners uses this as just a pure business strategy and don't leave, and just really see it as a way that they maybe are going to retire in 10 years, but wow, the tax benefits of switching to an ESOP are really going to help bolster this business. I'd love to use that as a
philanthropist to leave your company to your employees.
Exactly. You don't have to be. It doesn't have to be a charity. I'd love to use this as a jumping off point, actually, to really look at how employee ownership can fit in as a strategy or solution for purchasing cooperatives and their members. And this is something that I know that we have quite a few members in the attendees today, so I'd love to hear how it relates to purchasing cooperatives, and is this a viable strategy for purchasing cooperatives to help support their members and help ensure that they're retaining those companies as members in the future?
I'll just jump in very quickly on that, knowing that we're short on time. I think it's a really great addition to the many services that purchasing cooperatives provide for their members. Succession planning, I hope, already is or will become a steady drumbeat of information from companies like Stratus and folks like us. Employee ownership gives you, trusted buyers who know your company to move the legacy forward, as we've already discussed. Project Equity did write a publication on this topic, actually, specifically for purchasing cooperatives and their members, together with support from NCBA, Clusa, and National Cooperative Bank. So there's a link to that on our website, and maybe we can even get that out to attendees who are interested.
That's a great one. Yeah, and would love to hear, for Doug and Sam especially, your experience with this and what you see as the fit there.
Sure, Doug. I'll take it quickly here, but no, you're right. It is a good fit, and as Hillary said, that nobody knows your business better than your employees, for better and for worse sometimes, right? And so providing, it starts with education, right? And providing, and we've found that being able to provide education through different organizations, through different associations, purchasing cooperatives, it just gets people thinking. And once they start thinking and realizing that there's a lot more to this process than just putting my business up on the market and somebody buys it, you know, like we talked about, it's all of the difference, it's all the connections in the community. Those become really important. Plus, then when you think about it from the purchasing cooperative side, not only are you adding value through another resource that you can give your members, but you also have strength in numbers, right? And so you don't want somebody to close their door. And as Miyake had put up on an earlier slide, that becomes a real concern if a business owner can't find a buyer. So that's the way that we look at it. And Doug, I know you have some thoughts as well.
Just very quickly, one of my board members, when I came on to NCBA Clusa about 4 years ago, said to me, cooperatives are solution machines, and they only, you know, they're only relevant when they're providing solutions. Purchasing cooperatives and members of purchasing cooperatives, you know, they're small businesses. And one of the solutions that those small business owners seek is succession, whether they're thinking about it soon enough or not. But you know, that's exactly the kind of service that a purchasing co-op can bring to its members, is think about, you know, the next step, and whether that's, you know, succession in doing things other than employee ownership, whatever those solutions are. But definitely bringing employee ownership, worker co-op as part of the succession, you know, options. I think it's a great service and hugely appreciated by the members of the cooperative. Again, whether those members of the cooperative were really thinking they needed that or not, it's appreciated when the time comes.
Sure, it's gonna hit you at some time, right? It's like death and taxes. So.
Yeah, and I'd love to we have a couple questions from the audience I'd love to get to real quickly, so we can just do these ones a little bit more succinctly. But basically we'll get to the first one is, and this is one that we hear commonly, is, oh, when I think of employee ownership or talk about it, I often get stories, the horror stories, right? Of, you know, employee-owned businesses beset with constant infighting, or even those who have maybe, for this specific example, someone who said they worked in an employee-owned architecture firm, that the owners finally killed the business by battling over direction every 5 to 8 years. So how can this governance dysfunction be avoided? As a quick lead, and I will say one of the ways that Project Equity does it, in part, is through training and education, right? And that's one of the reasons why we offer our Thrive program. We stick around for 2 years because, you know, being a good board member is a skill, and we help train that, right? And so there are ways, you know, these are just business models. Every business model can be beset by constant infighting as well. And so I think it's a bit of a misnomer that the cooperative model or employee ownership model is the cause of that. However, you know, I'd love to open it up to the group about ways that can be avoided.
I'll just jump in pretty briefly on that. 2 quick points. You know, one is that there's nothing under the sun so wonderful that it can't be screwed up if you really put your mind to it. So there'll always be a few outliers of things that aren't done well, bad advisors, but somebody's, you know, screwed things up. But overall, if you look at the data, you know, actual research, you know, systematically, in fact, employee-owned companies are higher performing than non-employee-owned companies. Yeah, there are all those rumors out there, oh, would it be the inmates running the asylum, or, you know, you need hard-headed business people in charge and that won't work. The evidence, you know, objectively, scientifically, the data is exactly the opposite. In fact, employees, because they care more, they have a stake in it, they know what's going on, they pay attention to good direction from their managers, and the results are they produce more and better. Productivity is higher, profitability is higher, growth is faster. So the objective evidence is out there that it actually works better, not just comparable, but better than conventionally owned companies for business results.
And I would also add, it's exactly the why we're advising to get help, get outside help. You know, like there's a reason that succession planning is successful and beneficial, and that transition assistance like Project Equity offers is beneficial and successful, right? Like it's not always, you know, it's, you know, just because you have a Camaro in the garage doesn't mean that you know how to work on it, right? And so everyone needs some skill set there. So we're right at 1, so I'd like to just do a quick round robin of some final thoughts. anything that you would like to leave the attendees with today. And we'll go clockwise from my screen. So Sam, do you have any final thoughts to share?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks to everybody, and thanks to these three, Doug and Martin and Hillary, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And I would just echo what Miyaka said: is don't be afraid to get help. It's never too early to reach out and start a conversation. It's some folks I've been working with since I started the business, and they're still thinking, or they're partially transitioned, as Martin was alluding to, and that becomes really important. Is get the advice. The return on investment is there, and it's in the data.
Great. Doug, do you have any final thoughts or things that you'd like to share?
Thank you again. Just that that's bringing these types of solution, as a purchasing cooperative is hugely beneficial to the members, both for the current business owners and the employees in the community. And I'll say actually for the cooperative itself, because it needs to think about how to maintain its membership. And one way to do it is to make sure that people who understand the value of the cooperative are the next ones who own it. So there's a lot of beneficiaries from these type of approaches, and really appreciate Stratus and Project Equity bringing this to the table today.
Thank you. All right, Hillary, and then Martin to wrap it up.
Yeah, so my thanks also to NCBA Clusa for sponsoring this, and to all the participants. The last thing I'll say is just that the cooperative community, as many of you probably know, is a wonderful community. So is the employee ownership community, the annual conferences of the National Center for Employee Ownership, the worker cooperative convenings, the other cooperative gatherings, the co-op week in DC every May. So I just hope people will connect to this community in more ways as these different movements and models for great ways of doing business. It's really good management, good leadership and governance, and great culture that makes any organization work well. And employee ownership can foster all of those things.
Awesome, great. Martin, wrap us up here.
Yeah, just a final thought. For those of you who may be new to this, I just want to make sure you understand that employee ownership, whether through co-ops or ESOPs, they're just technical differences in the form for the most part. Employee ownership is not new. The ESOP form specifically has been around since 1975. And in that time, tens of thousands of companies set up these ESOPs. So you're not a guinea pig. You're not trying something experimental. Has a very, very proven and very successful track record. And in fact, what I find when I talk to so many, business owners and managers that companies have set this up, is they tell me how much more fun they're having. It's so much easier and more fun to run a company when everybody at the company understands why we're doing what we're doing, why we have to watch our costs, why it's so exciting that the sales guy just came back and with a new $3 million deal, like in the home run, and people are all high-fiving in the hallway. So as the boss, I don't have to constantly be watching everybody and telling them what to do. They all kind of get it, and we're all celebrating together. So that's one of the reasons why, as I said earlier, it's actually a good business that companies are more profitable and faster growing and have fun doing it.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you greatly to NCBA Clusa for hosting Stratus and Project Equity. It's been a wonderful event, and I appreciate Doug, Hillary, and Martin, as well as my partner in crime, or partner in cooperative, I should say, Sam. So thank you all, it's been wonderful. And to all the attendees, we look forward to hearing from you. So please reach out to Sam and I.
All right, thank you everyone. We ran a bit over. Thank you for bearing with us. I think that was such an important discussion. Thank you, Miyaka and Sam, and Stratus Wealth Advisors and Project Equity for organizing today's webinar. We really appreciate it. And to our panelists, thank you for sharing your insights and your ideas. And then to our audience for joining us today, we appreciate that. One quick thing, I want to mention that today's webinar was recorded. So keep an eye out for a link coming to your inbox soon. And with that, we will let you go. Stay safe, stay well, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.